Tonight at 10, a date is formally proposed for a new referendum on Scottish independence. The Scottish Government wants it to take place on the 19th of October next year, subject to legal consent.
My determination is to secure a process that allows the people of Scotland, whether yes, no or yet to be decided, to express their views in a legal, constitutional referendum.
8 years after the last vote, the Prime Minister says that there are more important priorities for his government.
Our plan for a stronger economy certainly means that we think that we're stronger working together.
We'll be looking at the likelihood of a referendum being held within 16 months. Also tonight, the campaigner Dame Deborah James, host of the BBC's You, Me and the Big C podcast, has died at the age of 40. In Ukraine, the aftermath of Russia's attack on a shopping centre, at least 20 people were killed and dozens injured. In New York, Elaine Maxwell is sentenced to 20 years for helping Jeffrey Epstein to abuse young girls. And at Wimbledon, Rafa Nadal is through to the second round, on the hunt for a new Grand Slam singles record.
And coming up on the BBC News channel, England's women pile on the runs against South Africa. Test tons for Siva and Davidson Richards have given them a first innings lead.
Welcome to BBC News at 10. On the 19th of October next year, the voters of Scotland should be given another opportunity to vote on the question of independence. That's the declared intention of the First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, and she's written to Prime Minister Boris Johnson to ask for formal consent for the vote to be held. Now, the referendum question being proposed is exactly the same as the one that was rejected back in 2014, should Scotland be an independent country. Boris Johnson is likely to refuse to endorse the plan for October 23. So Nicola Sturgeon has asked the UK Supreme Court to decide if the referendum can go ahead without approval from Westminster. 8 years on, in September 2014, the voters of Scotland rejected independence at that time by 55% to 45%. And most opinion polls suggest that the gap has narrowed over the past 2 years ago, as we can see from that set of graphs there. Our Scotland editor James Cook reports now from Edinburgh.
Scotland 2014, when politics came alive.
How dare they say that this country is not capable of running its own affairs?
This is everyone's flag, everyone's country, everyone's culture and everyone's street.
This is the vision we've got for our country.
But should we do this all over again? How does the nation feel about the idea of a second referendum?
Yeah, I think if there's a public call for it, then we should definitely have one and just see what the public thinks. I don't think it's the best idea.
Yes, go for it. Yeah, another one.
Oh my God, again?
Presiding officer.
Well, yes, if Nicola Sturgeon has her way.
Now is the time for independence.
The plan is to ask voters, should Scotland be an independent country, to which they said no 8 years ago.
I can announce that the Scottish Government is proposing that the independence referendum be held on the 19th of October 2023. These are...
But does this Parliament have the power to hold that vote? The First Minister now says she wants the Supreme Court to decide sooner rather than later.
The fact is, neither legal opinions nor political arguments will resolve this point. We must establish legal fact. That is why, in my view, we must seek now to accelerate to the point when we have legal clarity, legal fact.
Last time, that wasn't needed. David Cameron agreed to hand over the power to hold a vote in 2014. His successor has no such plans.
We think the number one priority for the country is the economic pressures, the spikes in the cost of energy. Our plan for a stronger economy certainly means that we think that we're stronger working together.
The senior civil servant who helped negotiate the terms of the last referendum says in the end it won't be judges who settle the matter.
The Supreme Court can absolutely say there's no mechanism to consult the Scottish people on independence without Westminster's consent, and plenty of people, plenty of experts expect that will be their verdict. Ultimately, there's some law to come first, and then there's some pretty raw politics about the nature of the country we live in, the nature of Scotland's position within the UK, the nature of its right to choose its own constitutional future.
Just across the road from the Parliament, the British state was putting on a show this afternoon. Nicola Sturgeon may want to keep the monarchy, but she's trying again to end the 300-year-old political project, which is the United Kingdom.
Well, we'll be talking to James and to Chris Mason in just a moment, but just to underline, the only thing that's clear at the moment, really, is that several important questions have to be answered before the path to a referendum can open up. If we start with the most straightforward way forward, if you like, what would that be? Well, we have to start with this momentous Act of Parliament at Westminster, the Scotland Act of 1998, which set up the Scottish Parliament in the first place, because Section 30 of this Act would allow Westminster to give permission to the Scottish Parliament to hold that referendum. But Boris Johnson also has to be part of that approval process. Now, to put it mildly, it's not expected that Boris Johnson will approve the process. So what has Nicola Sturgeon done? Well, she's done something which some experts think is actually a massive political gamble. She's asked the UK Supreme Court to give its view on whether it would be legal for the Scottish Parliament to hold a referendum in Scotland without the permission of Westminster. That's the question. And of course, that means for the First Minister that if the UK Supreme Court ruled against her and said that it did not think it was legal, well, where would that leave the SNP under Nicola Sturgeon? She says that she would then lead the party into the next UK general election on one policy. And that policy would be Scottish independence. In other words, kind of holding a referendum within the general election campaign, which would pose challenges all around, I think it's fair to say. So let's talk to Chris Mason and to James Cook, our two experts in the field. I'll start with you, Chris, to say really, well, is Boris Johnson going to be concerned about the tactics now that Nicola Sturgeon is clearly developing?
Huw, the Prime Minister was on his plane here to Madrid to the NATO summit as Nicola Sturgeon was on her feet. And I asked him about this, and he said he would study it carefully and he would respond properly. But take a step back. The UK government does not want another referendum anytime soon. And put yourself into the shoes of the Prime Minister or any UK Prime Minister. The idea of the family of nations that they govern breaking apart, as they would see it, is a horrible prospect. But for how long can they stand in the way of another referendum if the SNP continue to make the case that they have a democratic mandate for one? So that's where the politics lies at the moment. The outcome obviously matters one way or another in time, but the process matters too, because the process shapes our politics now. Look at what happened after the last referendum. The SNP skyrocketed as a party at Westminster. That makes it harder for Labour to win a general election, and it may mean, as you mentioned, that the next general election is fought with the constitutional question of the UK right at the heart of it. And that's why tonight what's happened today matters wherever you're watching in the UK, yes, in Scotland, but everywhere else too.
Indeed. Chris, thanks very much. Let's turn to James in Edinburgh. Some experts today, James, political experts, saying that this involvement of the UK Supreme Court at such an early stage is actually a big gamble by the First Minister. What did you make of it?
Well, I think there's something in that up to a point, in the sense that Nicola Sturgeon clearly wants to just get on with it and arguably perhaps even get it over with. As we've been hearing, there are plenty legal experts who suggest that the Scottish Government doesn't really have a case in the Supreme Court, that the union is quite clearly a matter reserved to Westminster. There are some who disagree with that, of course, and it may yet be that the Scottish Government wins that case. But Nicola Sturgeon's clearly, very obviously, preparing to act if she loses it. And what's she going to do? Well, Chris is just talking about it there. She's going to move on into the next general election campaign with this alternative idea of fighting that campaign on this single issue, effectively saying to the voters in Scotland, look, there's no other way to secure independence for this country, so if you vote for the SNP and if a majority of SNP MPs are returned from Scotland to Westminster in that general election, then that means essentially we can begin negotiations for independence. Our opponents will obviously have a different view. It's a gamble for both sides. Nicola Sturgeon's hoping to trade on this idea that the democratic will of the Scottish people is being thwarted and that'll push up support for independence. The UK government hope that by focusing on the record of the Scottish government here, it'll fall.
James, many thanks again. James Cook, our Scotland editor, and Chris Mason, our political editor in Madrid. Thank you both very much. Now, there's more analysis from James Cook on the independence question, because James has prepared a special part on the BBC iPlayer, which you might want to look at. Search for independence, why Scotland could vote again, and you'll see some more analysis there by James on this work. And of course, you can follow live on the iPlayer, or indeed use the iPlayer app to find that content too. Now, the campaigner, Dame Deborah James, has died of bowel cancer at the age of 40. She'd been receiving end-of-life care at home and had raised millions to help others affected by cancer. Dame Deborah was host of the BBC's You, Me and the Big C podcast and was honoured in recognition of her fundraising work. Our correspondent Rachel Burden has more details.
My name is Deborah James. I'm a mum to 2 kids and a dog called Winston. 3 years ago, at the age of 35, I was diagnosed with stage 4 bowel cancer, and I have been living with cancer ever since.
She was young, she was vibrant, with an infectious sense of fun. For Deborah James, cancer was a devastating blow. But she was determined to share her story, in the hope it would help others.
I've had everything: surgery, chemotherapy, radiotherapy to enable me to live with cancer.
On social media, the former teacher called herself Bowel Babe, detailing the endless rounds of treatment, but poking fun at her disease, having fun with her kids, and marking life's important milestones.
I made my 40th birthday. That's huge, that's enormous. It's the birthday that I never thought I would make.
I like winding up my oncologist because he's very straight-laced.
On her podcast, You, Me and the Big C, Deborah was open.
Have a conversation and you're sat on the chemo ward in an orange catsuit.
Funny.
And he's like, he doesn't want to say anything, and you're just like, yeah, hi. I'm back on treatment. And every single time I'm back on treatment, I'm like, I don't want to be here. Like, I don't want to be back on treatment.
But never tried to hide her emotions.
And just think, it's just not fair.
In a final interview, she hoped new treatments would soon be found.
Cancer should become a chronic disease. I hope it will be. In my kids' lifetime, I hope it will become a chronic disease. But I think there are people doing amazing things, and we need to support them and fund them.
The fund she set up to aid research has raised millions. For years, Dame Deborah, as she became, fought to increase awareness of her disease, with social media posts like these inspiring thousands of fellow patients. In the words of one cancer charity, the lives her campaign saved and will continue to save was nothing short of incredible.
The news which came in the last couple of hours or so of the tragic loss of Dame Deborah James, the indefatigable campaigner and broadcaster, at the age of 40. She's died. And our correspondent Tim Muffet is with me, because Tim, It's quite a job to keep track of all the tributes that have been paid this evening.
Yeah, many tributes coming in recognition not just of Dame Deborah's ability to raise money, and lots of it, more than £6 million for cancer charities, but also to raise awareness and to encourage people to get over any embarrassment they might have about potential symptoms. Prime Minister Boris Johnson said that the awareness she brought to bowel cancer and the research her campaigning has funded will be her enduring legacy. Because of her, many, many lives will be saved. Sir Keir Starmer, Labour leader, said this is deeply sad news. Dame Deborah James' charity work was truly inspirational. Even in the most challenging moments, she continued to raise awareness about bowel cancer and impacted so many people's lives. And her family this evening have described Deborah as an inspiration who raised awareness, broke down barriers and challenged taboos. And they also posted this message on Instagram, words from Deborah herself. It says, "Find a life worth enjoying, take risks, love deeply, have no regrets, and always, always have rebellious hope. And finally, check your poo. It could just save your life." Words that are so much in keeping with the message and the tone of the message Dame Deborah was keen to get across. She wished she'd checked out her symptoms at an earlier stage, and she urged others to do so.
Tim, once again, many thanks. Tim Muffet there, with the latest tributes to Dame Deborah. Well, now, Turkey has changed its mind and has now agreed to support the NATO membership applications from Finland and Sweden. The breakthrough came after the three countries signed a joint memorandum to extend their full support against threats to each other's security. They met at the NATO summit in Madrid, where again the war in Ukraine dominated the discussions, as well as the likelihood of Russian aggression against other nations. Our Europe editor, Katja Adler, reports now from Madrid.
It's taken weeks of negotiations, but Sweden and Finland are now well on their way to becoming NATO members after they signed an agreement with Turkey to counter threats to each other's security. NATO hoped to present this united front tonight to send a clear message to Vladimir Putin.
Welcoming Finland and Sweden into the alliance will make them safer, NATO stronger, and the Euro-Atlantic area more secure. This is vital as we face the biggest security crisis in decades.
Ukraine, of course, is on everyone's minds here. But so is the wider security threat from Russia. NATO is ramping up its rapid reaction forces from 40,000 to 300,000. Like these French paratroopers preparing to support NATO countries close to Russia, now feeling very exposed.
We can't defend ourselves alone. We will never be alone, strong. So we have to have friends and allies.
Finland and Sweden agree. Just look at Finland's long border with Russia.
Hello.
Thank you so much for taking the time. Moscow's aggression has shocked them.
We realized that we have to make a change. Well, it appeared that Russia is ready to try to invade a neighboring sovereign country.
Are you worried, though, because President Putin told you directly, he warned you not to join NATO, or there would be repercussions?
Yes, we are not afraid, not at all.
But today, Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov warned the West, beefing up its defences and supporting Ukraine would only prolong Kiev's agony. And that is the delicate balancing act here. All NATO countries agree Russia is the aggressor. Ukraine must be helped militarily. But to what extent? That's where there's disagreement. Should Russia be given such a bloody nose it thinks twice in the future about acts of aggression? Or, if Vladimir Putin feels pushed in a corner, is there a risk that he'll escalate, even making good on a threat to use nuclear weapons? Trying to keep NATO allies together is Joe Biden, arguably the star guest at tonight's gala dinner hosted by Spain's King and Queen. Europe's security has been thrown upside down by Vladimir Putin, but one thing hasn't changed. When this continent is in crisis, it still relies heavily on Washington.
Well, Well, Huw, not long ago, Emmanuel Macron of France dismissed NATO as brain dead, so pretty much obsolete. No one is saying that now. In fact, the Prime Minister described the alliance today as the indisputable guarantor of European security. Defence spending, he says, will go up in the UK. We've heard similar promises from other European leaders in order to help safeguard all of our futures, they say.
Katja, many thanks again for the latest there in Madrid. Katja Adler, our Europe editor. Well, in Ukraine, the authorities say more than 20 people were killed yesterday in the packed shopping centre struck by a Russian missile. Around 40 people are still missing. Dozens more have been injured. And forensic experts are struggling to identify some of the dead after the huge blaze that swept through the complex in Kremenchuk. Our Europe correspondent Nick Beake has sent this report.
It's hard to tell that this was a shopping centre. But when you get closer, there are signs. Russia admits it fired missiles yesterday, but says they only landed nearby, and then a fire spread here, to what it claims was an empty building. Everyone we met today said all that is lies.
I saw the fire and a lot of people from here, just running.
Danny was in his coffee shop opposite.
You run into safety place and listen children's, girls, a lot of screams.
As we finish talking, another warning.
The sirens are blaring once again. The emergency services are continuing their work. Everyone else, though, is now trying to take shelter wherever they can.
There's a bunker close by. Inside, we find the man responsible for the security of Ukraine.
Your country has had 4 months of Russian attack. We're talking in an underground bunker. There's another alert at this moment. When does this stop? How can this stop?
I think it should be put in death. By our efforts or by efforts of Russian people.
And do you think Putin's death will be soon?
I hope it.
A short drive away, they were treating the injured from yesterday's attack. Sales assistant Maxim tells us there were about 100 customers in his store, but doesn't remember anything after the strike. His wife, Victoria, though, can recall everything. She explains that she called her husband, who said he was trapped in the fire and smoke and couldn't escape. But somehow he did. Russia claims its missiles actually hit this nearby factory because it was storing American and European military supplies. So we asked the Ukrainian emergency services if we could visit.
Russia says that there were weapons and ammunition from Western countries in this factory. Is that true?
Absolutely not. It is a place for making road equipment, machines for road construction. There is also a greenhouse nearby where the workers grow cucumbers.
Back at the shopping centre, we're invited inside to witness the destruction.
Well, we've just been told that this area was home to a number of different shops. A pet shop, a pharmacy over there, a toy shop, and it was in this place, just around here, that they found the greatest number of bodies. They say they recovered 11 people.
G7 leaders say the attack on this shopping centre was a war crime. Ukraine says it's terrorism, and Russia continues to claim that it doesn't target civilians. Nick Beake, BBC News, Kremenchuk.
Ghislaine Maxwell, a former girlfriend of the sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, has been sentenced to 20 years in prison by a court in New York. She was convicted last December of helping Epstein to abuse teenage girls. Our North America correspondent, Neda Taufik, is in New York with the latest. Neda?
Well, Huw, Ghislaine Maxwell showed little emotion as the sentence was read. The judge said the 20 years reflected her heinous and predatory crimes for which she's taken no responsibility. It was less than prosecutors wanted. Nevertheless, they said it showed that no one was above the law.
A long-fought victory for Annie Farmer and all of Ghislaine Maxwell's victims. Justice was slow. She was one of the earliest to report Maxwell and the pedophile Jeffrey Epstein to police in 1996. But today, Annie said it was never too late for accountability.
Maxwell and Epstein were predators who were able to use that power and privilege to harm countless individuals, and for far too long, the institutions that should be protecting the public were instead protecting them. And I still hope that we find out more about how that was allowed to occur.
Maxwell did not look at her victims, but she did address them. She said she was sorry for the pain they had experienced. She also said her association with Epstein, who she described as a manipulative, cunning man, was the greatest regret of her life.
Her statement felt like a very hollow apology to me. She did not take responsibility for the crimes that she committed, and it felt like once more her trying to do something to benefit her and not at all about the harm that she had caused.
The court allowed others who were not a part of the trial to also confront Maxwell. The pain and anguish she caused was plain to see as several accusers emotionally spoke about the lasting impact of her crimes, such as Liz Stein.
She had a wonderful, full, beautiful life, and so many of us just didn't have a chance to have that. I think that the closure part of her sentencing is maybe the beginning for a lot of us to start having the life that we anticipated we might have if we had never met Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein.
The British daughter of the disgraced media tycoon Robert Maxwell ran in the most influential circles, rubbing elbows with presidents and princes. But in court, as she waited to hear her fate, she was supported by just 3 members of her family. The judge rejected the defense's claim that Maxwell was being punished in Epstein's place and said her sentencing had to reflect the seriousness of her role in the horrific scheme. Today is a major step toward justice and perhaps healing for the victims. Neda Tawfiq, BBC News, New York.
Let's have a look at some of the other stories making the news today. In Texas, at least 50 people have been found dead in an abandoned truck on the outskirts of San Antonio. The authorities say 16 people, including 4 children, have been taken to hospital with heat exhaustion. The truck was found around 100 miles from the US-Mexico border. The Mexican president has blamed trafficking and a lack of control at the border. President Biden described the incident as heartbreaking and said his administration was working to deal with the criminal gangs. The UK's biggest police force, the Metropolitan Police, has been put into special measures after a series of major failures. The force has been heavily criticised over the way that it handled high-profile cases such as the murder of Sarah Everard and the investigation into the rapist and murderer Stephen Port. A 101-year-old former guard at a Nazi concentration camp, identified as Joseph S., has been given a 5-year jail term for assisting in the murder of thousands at Sachsenhausen near Berlin. He's the oldest Nazi criminal ever to stand trial in a German court, though he's always claimed that he worked as a farm labourer during the 3 years he was a camp guard. Donald Trump knew that his supporters had weapons when he urged them to storm the US Capitol in January last year, according to a former White House aide. Cassidy Hutchinson told the official inquiry into the riots that senior officials had warned repeatedly that Mr. Trump's rally on that day to try to overturn Joe Biden's victory could spiral out of control. And at one stage, President Trump was demanding that he be allowed to join the march on the Capitol. Our North America editor, Sarah Smith, has more details.
Do you swear or affirm on the penalty of perjury?
A surprise witness, her appearance kept secret until today, delivered explosive testimony, describing how Trump had been informed that many in the crowd on January the 6th were carrying weapons.
I got 3 men walking down the street and fatigued was carrying AR-15s.
Yet he was furious about security measures. Metal detectors or mags were being used to find guns and knives. He wanted the screening stopped to let more people in. Ms Hutchison told the committee in previously recorded testimony.
I overheard the president say something to the effect of, I don't effing care that they have weapons. They're not here to hurt me. Take the effing mags away.
We're going to walk down and I'll be there with you.
Trump did want to go to the Capitol, but as he ordered the Secret Service to drive him there, he was told it wasn't safe.
The president said something to the effect of, I'm the effing president. Take me up to the Capitol now.
When the president's Secret Service agent, Bobby Engel, refused to go to the Capitol, Trump got physical.
The president reached up towards the front of the vehicle to grab at the steering wheel. Mr. Engel grabbed his arm, said, "Sir, you need to take your hand off the steering wheel. We're going back to the West Wing. We're not going to the Capitol." Mr. Trump then used his free hand to lunge towards Bobby Engel.
Trump has responded, saying this is a fake story that is sick and fraudulent. Today is the first time we've heard exactly what was happening inside the White House on January the 6th. How the president's most senior advisers anticipated the violence and did little to stop it, and then asked Trump for a presidential pardon so they couldn't be prosecuted.
Did White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows ever indicate that he was interested in receiving a presidential pardon related to January 6th?
Mr. Meadows did seek that pardon, yes, ma'am.
First-hand evidence from someone who was right at the heart of the White House. Sarah Smith, BBC News, Washington.
Some cricket news. The former England captain, Michael Vaughan, says he's stepping back from his work on the BBC's cricket coverage. It follows allegations made last year that he made a racist comment to a group of Asian players while playing for Yorkshire County Cricket Club. Vaughan, who denies the claim, says that he's stepping back temporarily in the interests of the game. And some of the day's tennis news. Day 2 of Wimbledon has drawn to a close, with the 7-time champion Serena Williams in action against France's Harmony Tan. Earlier, Rafa Nadal began his quest to win a record 23rd men's Grand Slam title. Our sports correspondent Joe Wilson has more on the action.
Rafael Nadal, the most precise professional. 2 of his 22 Grand Slam titles came this year. He is managing a chronic foot injury. He is dealing with opponents so good at times against Argentina's Francisco Cerundolo, he almost had to apologise. It took him 4 sets, but after 20 years as a professional, Nadal still wins like he's a teenager.
Look at Nadal's reaction.
So, leave the stage for the next great. This is a player who symbolised success and certainty, but now no one knew what Serena Williams could do, not even her. In the old days, Serena could overpower everyone. Well, against Harmony Tan, the old days were back in some moments. It would have been easy for her French opponent, ranked 113 in the world, to be intimidated. She wasn't, and she won the first set 7-5.
Got it. And look at the reaction.
Remember, Serena hadn't played singles for a year. Well, that's a return. Second set to Williams, 6-1. Third set, what did she have left? What could she summon? Well, the spirit was willing.
Nicely done there. Serena likes it too.
Serena served for the match at 5-4. Whatever her brain was telling her, whatever she remembered, this was now. This was Harmony Tan.
Got it.
And this was serve broken. After 3 hours on court, they are still on court, locked in a third set tiebreak, with Harmony Tan, as I speak, just completing the most dramatic victory here after dark at Wimbledon. Joe, many thanks. Thanks for the result there just at the last second. It is 25-11, and Stav is with me. I'm not quite sure how they coped weather-wise in Wimbledon today. Stav, what did you tell us?
It was pretty good, actually, Huw. Further west, though, it was pretty disappointing. Good evening to you. A pretty disappointing summer's day for Scotland, Western England, Wales. Heavy rain, strong winds. Felt quite cool as well. Tomorrow, a little bit better, less windy for all of us, certainly in the north and the west, and it's a mixture of sunshine and showers. Now, we've had this area of low pressure, which is slowly pulling away now and weakening, but that's what's brought the strong winds to the north and the west of the country, and this pretty active weather front, which hasn't moved very far, has been affecting more northern western areas for a long time, but it slowly, you can see, pushing its way eastwards now over the last few hours. So as we head through tonight, that weather front will tend to weaken. There'll still be some heavier bursts on it as it continues to push its way eastwards across Scotland and England. 1 or 2 showers behind it, otherwise some clear spells, and the winds will slowly ease down by the end of the night. Temperature-wise, look at that though, pretty mild. 12 to 14 degrees will be the low for most of us. So tomorrow morning we start off with that weather front across eastern Scotland, eastern England. Could be quite damp across the southeast, and then around lunchtime it should clear away, and then we're all into the regime of sunshine and showers. Now some of these showers could be quite heavy, thundery across northern and western areas, but they'll be pretty hit and miss. Some areas seeing the sunshine and some areas staying dry altogether. Top temperatures, best of the sunshine in the southeast, 22, 23 degrees, but it'll feel a little bit warmer further north and west. So in the southeast with our highest temperatures, pretty high pollen levels, low to moderate further north and west. Now for Wimbledon, it could start off a little bit grey, damp through the morning with that weather front, but then as it clears away, it should be brighter, and we'll be pretty unlucky to catch a shower here, I think, into the afternoon. It should stay dry, feel quite warm with lighter winds. The sunshine and showers themes continues for Thursday, Friday, even into Saturday. High pressure starts to build in though for the weekend. Into next week it'll be turning warmer, Huw.
OK, Stav, many thanks once again. Stav there with the weather. That is BBC News at 10 on the 28th of June. There's more analysis of the day's stories, especially of course the story we started on tonight, which is about Nicola Sturgeon's plans for an independence referendum in Scotland next year. And Kirsty, in fact, is at Holyrood at the Scottish Parliament, ready with Newsnight on BBC Two. That'll be up just after the tennis. And then, of course, on BBC One, all of my colleagues across the nations and regions standing by for the news where you are. So from the 10 o'clock team, thanks for watching and good night.